This is Ty Newell, and this is the COVID status report number 8 with data as of April 6th, and today is April 7th. There is more hope that in the US we are slowing the spread of the virus down, slowing its rate of spread. But it's important to remember 14 days ago, the US had 40,000 infections, where now we're crossing over 400,000. Italy, which was hard hit roughly about a week before the US, was at 70,000 infections and has held themselves to 130,000. As we move through this, it's quite clear the US has handled this disaster worse than any other country. And we have to ask ourselves the question, why? We had more warning than Italy. The population of the US is not the reason. This is a small fraction of the US population, and so it's not a constrained problem. It's one in which we did not dampen the spread appropriately, even after having the luxury of watching China about a month before, and then South Korea, Italy, about 1 to 2 weeks before, and then having similar and simultaneous growth of infections as France and Germany, that we still were not adequate in our response, and we continue to lag. And now with supplies being strained, we're just having difficulty keep control. As I mentioned, there is hope that we can turn this disaster into less of a disaster, but it still counts as one of the most major catastrophes to ever hit this country. As we look at the infections per infected parameter, what we see across the board finally is an improving trend, and that we're all getting closer to a level of 2 infections caused by an infected person over a 14-day period. And that is at a level, as I've mentioned, that recoveries should start outpacing newly infected, and hopefully in all of our countries our medical resources aren't so constrained, and that we can enter a new phase, one that will mirror that in South Korea and China, where we can then adequately test, quarantine, and track other potential new infections and keep those out of the general public so that we can begin opening ourselves back up. Now, this is a good day, just seeing that South Korea and Germany both below 2, Spain with a very difficult struggle, but getting down to 2, and everyone in general showing improvement, although the UK and the US need to stay on it, and France seems to be struggling some as well. But overall, a good trend for all of these countries. As I mentioned, continued hope, and this new path that I've plotted on this logarithmic representation of the raw data. We are following the predicted path I've made based on this infections per infected parameter. And if we continue in the current trend where we can stay below 5, and then 4, and 3, and then reach a level of 2 and hopefully 1.5 for the infections parameter, that possibly we can limit the overall number of infections in the US below 1.5 million. And that with the current fatality rate, that hopefully we're able to keep fatalities below 20,000. But as of today, with 12,000 fatalities and the percentage of fatalities not looking good, this is for sure something of concern. And even though this orange path is a much better, more desirable trend than what it looked like just a week ago following this red path, that we're able to keep our infections from exceeding 10 million and now hopefully just staying somewhat above 1 million. As we look at other countries with similar levels of infection at the time that it started growing in our country, and that it looks like they will be able to stay in the perhaps 200,000 range instead of 1,200,000 as we are, we have to ask ourselves why. What could we have done better? What were we missing? Where didn't we perform well? On the state view, and these are meant to be representative of, say, a Western state, Washington, with early infection, along with New York, and then Georgia, which is just now experiencing a fairly high level of infectious growth, and then Illinois, which is somewhat in between. And similar to the others, we're seeing reasonably good trends. Georgia is perhaps somewhat of concern, and as you heard with the governor trying to open back up too early, that their infections parameter may be taking off, but we'll just have to see. And to end this one, let me first mention that I am not going to do another video recording for a week. I'm going to keep following the data, but I think right now we're perhaps getting to a level where I hope we can keep in control of these trends. And in a week, we'll take a look at where we were today and then where we've gone, see how we come out on that overall infections path. And let me mention, in line with The Beautiful Cure, the book that I mentioned last time, PBS has a documentary by Ken Burns, so you automatically know it'll be wonderful, called The Gene. It's starting tonight, and it's a 2-part series with the second part released next week. And it's on a book by Siddhartha Mukherjee, who is a professor at Columbia University. And his book, The Gene, which I read, is just wonderful, beginning with Gregor Mendel. You'll learn about fruit flies and just all of the curious things that went into understanding what a gene is, how it functions, and then the new tools and new understanding. So it goes from the earliest history and thoughts about our makeup to the present day. And Siddhartha Mukherjee is just a wonderful storyteller. So I hope you get a chance to take a look at that. Use the mask, stay home, and thank you to those folks that are on the front lines for us.